if the business, for whatever reason, is classified as a necessity and so is able to stay open, then it's still a question for the employees of whether they want to work there, whether they want to go into work and risk it. But that is, from what I've seen, that's been kind of like on a voluntary basis, and it's like, it's up to you. You have to decide that.
I mean, I think for sure there's some of that, but people also need to work. So there's a pressure towards it.
Yeah. Would that have to be signed off by the government?
What?
Like, okay,
I don't think so.
Really?
What we were talking about?
Yeah, like we were talking about whether studios could potentially kind of create like a safe space shoot in which everyone had been tested and didn't have the virus. That wouldn't be seen as like, really?
It's a private enterprise, so I don't know how it would be problematic. You mean from a discrimination perspective?
Maybe in the fact that like everyone's supposed to be staying at home.
I don't think
that's most effective when everyone's doing it.
I don't necessarily think that this will happen while social distancing is going on.
Okay.
But this is not going away.
Yeah.
Like we're not gonna whenever May or whenever it is that this is like over. I mean, whenever it is we're allowed to do stuff, I don't think that that's gonna just be like the end of this.
Right. And is that because of they're saying that it might be like there might be a resurgence in the fall?
It's not just. I don't know if the fall has. I don't know what the fall has to do with it.
Yeah.
I think it's more like charting the course of epidemics in general and like numbers, like how things spread.
Mm.
Because the social distancing thing is not to eradicate the virus. It's to slow it all down so that the hospitals, so that not everyone is getting deathly ill at the same time. They're getting deathly ill a little bit slower, so there's more of a chance that they can be taken care of.
Yeah.
So that's the whole purpose of this, which means that it's not going anywhere. Like our social distancing is not like eradicating it. It's not going like bye-bye.
But it is like containing it, isn't it?
No, it's slowing it.
Slowing it.
Yeah.
What I mean by containing it is like you won't just suddenly get the virus without coming into contact with it. So if you don't come into contact with it, and like the people who have it are socially distancing and don't give it to you, and then I'm again showing my complete ignorance, and it's fine. I guess I've been like watching the numbers of like recovered, because I think like once like this is recovered, I don't know, it like the virus itself dies off.
What do you, I don't understand. I'm not clear on what.
It's like that the virus, right? Like it only exists. Wait, what are we saying? It only, I know like it can exist on surfaces, but for the most part, we're worried about like the people that are sick passing it on to others. So if the people who have it are quarantined,
which is not the case.
Which is not the case.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Right. Why isn't that the case?
Because we're way too late. And it's already happened. Like we would have had to do this months ago.
Right, okay, but now we're doing it.
Yeah.
And ideally, if everyone socially distances, then
I don't think it's like a mathematical. Yeah, it's not a vacuum. Containing it is not an option. It's past.
So you're just saying like the virus itself is going to continue living for like at least another year. And people are going to continue to get sick from it.
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know where I'm getting it. I've just pulled it out of my butt. And it's a thing that I've heard thrown around somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone's speculating about numbers. I remember there was, what was it, The Atlantic or something came out with an article that was like the 4 possible timelines for the virus. Did you read that?
I didn't get a physical one.
It was just like online. And I think the like last extreme example is what you're talking about. That's something that I'm not talking about.
I mean, I don't know when that.
Yeah, I don't know. That was like first days, I think. Yeah.
Because now the absolute best case scenario is between 100,000 people and 240,000 people dying.
Yeah.
That's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Which is unlikely. Because like a lot of states are not distancing. Florida has no shelter at home.
Okay.
Florida gets full. Like this is literally why voting matters. This is literally why the government matters. We're like watching it unfold. And right now, all these states are bidding for the same items. So it's like eBay for states. And the prices are getting jacked up because like they're outbidding each other.
They're bidding for states? I'm sorry.
No, the states are bidding.
Yeah. For what?
Medical supplies. Yeah, so they're not going to get the supplies and the ventilators and stuff are not going to get distributed evenly.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget where this conversation started. Oh, the studios.
Yeah.
So I'm not suggesting that people will begin production during like declared shelter in place. I'm talking about like whatever comes right after. As in when it gets loosened up or opened up to whatever extent it does get loosened up.
Okay. And does that idea... Yeah. You seem discouraged by that idea.
Which idea?
When you presented of like how the studios meant to work.
I don't think I'm discouraged.
Okay.
No. Why would I be discouraged?
No. Like celebrities can afford the test, like rich people can afford the test.
Yeah, that's the only part of it that's like it brings up the like jaded. Because again, especially if the federal government is not doing any kind of regulating, then it's just free market principles being applied to life and death. Things like everything from ventilators to tests. So what I was suggesting is I kind of had this idea that we were all in this somehow together. Obviously, yeah. But it somehow, I don't know if someone mentioned it to me. I'm like actually confused whether somebody brought this up or if someone, I don't know where I got this idea. But I then realized that like people with, I hadn't thought that like they can just test people. That hadn't come into my head.
Right.
I thought we were going to have to wait until basically everyone was fine until productions could resume.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't think they have to. They just have to test like crazy. And if they have access to it, and I think that Fox, Searchlight, whoever,
yeah,
probably has more access than. Yeah, or then some other industry like a nail salon, or whoever else, other businesses.
Do you also think this is going to be the thing from now on? Well, like, I haven't read anything about this. I remember reading this kind of thing before COVID happened, but that viruses are going to be pretty common.
Oh, yeah.
So this quarantine, like, we're going to get really good at this. This is going to become normal.
Yeah, it should have been normal this time, yeah. Meaning there should have been a plan.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Not that it would be normal experientially. But again, there are a lot of things that like we're hurtling towards it. We've been hurtling towards this shit for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like
there's been warnings. And you know what? That's apparently what most people do.
What?
Is they hear warnings and they go, yeah.
Yes.
And they push the boundaries because they don't think it's going to, I don't know.
I think I'm a little bit more cynical on that front.
Yeah.
I don't think it's everyday people. I think it's people who can make money off of it. Like the more chickens you can sell by using more antibiotics or whatever the fuck to keep more of them going out the front door.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really thinking of like the larger impact that you might be having on this whole species of like bacteria and viruses that are just practicing evolving.
It's steroids. I mean, literally in some cases. Like you watched the Lance Armstrong doc and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like everyone was on steroids. So if you wanted to compete, you had to be on it too.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is. It's like everyone is using it. So if you want to have any chance in the industry, you have to be using these practices too. It does so you can't even afford to be thinking that larger picture because everyone has to be thinking larger picture then.
That's probably true for a lot of farms. Yeah. I mean, that's was this ongoing discussion when that whole Monsanto thing went down. That's like a perfect example. Did you ever read The Omnivore's Dilemma?
Yeah. That's good.
It's been a long time I've seen it and stuff. And kind of like in a direction, like your iPhone breaks every 3 years or whatever. You know what I mean? Like there's this creative obsolescence. Like if you try to hang on to your old model something, it pretty soon will be incompatible. Like you have to have wireless headphones now if you have a iPhone. Because they like basically, because they remove the headphone jack. And it's like, seems sort of unrelated, but it's not. It's the same thing. There's like all this shoving in this direction. So in the same way, like I remember there being this like clusterfuck between the things the stuff that they were spraying, pesticides that they were spraying. There's some connection between the type of seed and the pesticides. So the people who were trying to like use the same seed from the previous year, those seeds or those plants or that crop was not resilient to the new kind of pesticide. So in order to survive the pesticide, you have to have the like genetically modified seed. So like it's these different avenues that are leading you. So if you're like, I do not want Bluetooth headphones, I just don't. Like at some point you will get, you'll hit up against something that will, you'll fucking find your own adventure to, well, just wait.
No, because you can get some that fit in out. But I know what you mean. You can't charge your phone anymore.
I mean, there's literally all of these headphones that you can't use anymore.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they don't have the fundamental jack, which has been the historically agreed upon way to connect these things since they exist.
You know what, for whatever reason I always think of is in Black Mirror, in the wedding Black Mirror. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I can't deal with that show.
Oh, this is the one with Bryce Dallas Howard.
I can't deal with it.
Do you know at least the episode that I'm talking
No.
about? Okay. It's a very well-known episode where basically like everyone has a rating system. Like everyone is rated kind of like on Yelp, and you have a star system, and she goes crazy because yeah. Anyways, she's trying to get to this wedding because it's going to up her rating because these people have a really good, are like high fours, and she needs to up her rating in order to get this house. And everything is just breaking down and breaking down. And she ends up renting this car. I don't know why I love this so much. She ends up renting this car, and then everything's electric at this point because it's all the future. And she tries to go to a charging station because she runs out of power. And literally the car is such a shit car, and it's so old that it doesn't like the charging station doesn't have the right plug for her fancy ass electric car. And then she ends up walking there. And for whatever reason, I always think of that. It's exactly that. Like if you don't have the latest thing, then I don't know. Tough luck. You walk. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So
these are very fierce.
I mean, there's some like dark comfort in experiencing the thing rather than just knowing that you're approaching it.
I guess so. It's like, hey, it's here.
Okay.
We have to figure out how to deal with this finally.
I guess this is the rapture.
Yeah. Have you like been online or like talking to anyone dealing with like xenophobia at all? Just because it's really funny. It's terrible.
Who?
People. My friend's friend got spat on in the park the other day.
What?
Yeah.
That's very dangerous.
Just spitting on people.
That's literally listening.
Maybe don't go spitting on people.
Literally listening.
But yeah, there's been a huge backlash. Backlash. I don't even know I don't know what to call it. There's just been like.
I know that Trump and his people
crimes.
have been like pushing the China virus, Wuhan virus. Have been calling it that. That's about all I know. I'm so unsurprised. Book 6 better be an upper.
Mm-hmm.
This better be
Oh,
a wild ride of literary pleasure.
and he's suspected, isn't it?
That's just not going to work today.
I suspect it's gonna start to get dark. That's my suspicion.
Right on time.
Yeah. We'll see.
Remember how I was like a spring chicken just 2 days ago?
Yeah, you remember? Yeah. Has that gone away now?
No, it hasn't gone away.
Okay.
There's just like the natural ups and downs of going through any experience, and at the moment, it's a little.
I mean, I went for a walk earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It is so beautiful outside.
I told you.
No, I know, but
For the last
she's been
3
like,
days.
we have a backyard. Go outside. But I went for a walk, and like, it's spring. It's green.
Yeah.
Smells wonderful.
We haven't hit jasmine time yet, but it's
Oh. How is the? I literally haven't. How is the garden? Are things blooming?
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great. The front is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I took my class outside today. Yeah. It was wonderful.
That's nice. Upper spring is here.
It was beautiful. I ate my breakfast outside. I need to troubleshoot the sofa cushions, and that's really been eating the back of my head. I'm not really know what to do about it. Those chocolate cushions.
There's a. They have fun to try. Stress by the dog. I would do that again.
Yeah, there's that too. Well, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So I feel a little handicapped in the spring break of the backyard.
Okay.
Slightly. And I guess I'm airing this in hopes that I'll come up with a solution. Yeah. Somehow that will resolve.
Mm.
Maybe book 6. Maybe not.
You know, put things in perspective.
It hasn't helped.
No.
No, joking about like hundreds of thousands of people down.
I know. Like, in regards to all of this, a lot of people are like, are you kidding me? Like, older generations were at war. That's why I'm like, maybe we'll put things in perspective.
Wait.
I just mean everything that's going on.
Who said what?
Huh?
Older generations were at war.
Yeah, like, in comparison to...
Yeah. World War II was like especially bad, but yeah. This is really big.
I'm not saying this isn't big,
Like
but for the people at home, this in comparison to being out, like, being in a battlefield in France.
I honestly don't think it's better.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
It's different.
Mm-hmm.
It's like people are not literally in France, but yeah, I just think it's different.
Okay.
But the like numbers of fatalities and stuff. This will come out on top. It might be the best thing that's ever happened in at least the country's history. In this like one event kind of way, not like a prolonged thing like fucking slavery.
Right.
But in terms of like an event. That's why the backyard needs to have cushions as well.
That's
That frankly is that's where I go with that. Because if you can't control anything, and the whole world may or may not be going to shit, one thing you can do is lie outside on cushions. Yeah.
Where are we? What happened yesterday?
Like in the book, or
In the book.
are we still talking? I can't remember. Rostov. Denisov. Oh, yeah. If Denisov dies tonight, I'm gonna be challenged.
Uh-huh.
Emotionally challenged. Tested. Yes.
So we were back in the army at war, and Denisov was what did he do?
He hijacked some caravan of goods or supplies or something because everyone's like fucking starving and
supplies, right? Yeah. So their regiment had zero food for 2 weeks. They were eating weeds that they found. I don't know.
That they knew to be toxic.
We're poisoning them, essentially, but they're so hungry, they're digging it up.
Mm-hmm.
Mashka's root or something, they called it. So they're starving. So Denisov
is like, fuck this.
Like a Robin Hood goes off, and he heard that there was a transport being delivered somewhere else, so he took it for his regiment. And then because of that, he got court-martialed. And in the process, he got shot in his leg. Yeah, he got shot. I forget. He was just being very rebellious. I forget how he got shot. Anyway, and then he ended up in hospital.
I think he was like parading around being like, nobody can keep me down. And then the French were like, look at that guy.
Let's keep him down.
And he was like, ow, but still. And then he went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Which is...
And then, Rostov then went on leave and decided to go visit Denisov. And
how was he on leave again? He was just on leave.
I don't know. Like,
he just got back from leave. He literally just got back.
I also don't understand like the army, because he's like, I have to go to the army now, and they're just like sitting in their huts, starving to death, not being at war. This is just the thing I don't understand.
Not to mention the fact that they're negotiating a peace.
Right.
So it's like,
so what was he doing there?
Can we at least go home and eat while you guys?
Yeah, let's not take all these supplies since there's no fighting. And if he can just come and go in this way, then I don't know.
He can't just come and go.
Okay.
That can't be true. Like,
well, didn't it kind of seem like Rostov said let's go back to war?
Well, a lot of these people are there by choice. So, yeah, they do want to be there. But, I mean, I'm sure you get like a certain amount of leave, and then that's that.
Okay. We should give a course on this book. We're so expert on it.
It's really, my dad was like, this is making me want to reread the book. And I was like, but wait. I was like, the whole thing.
Reading the book.
He was like, oh yeah. But it's very late. It's past my bedtime. I was like, oh, it's all the videos are there. They don't go live and disappear. I was like, I don't know how to process this. I gotta go.
Your dad should create a competing channel.
He wants to.
Oh my god. I wonder what his would be like. It would be very informative. You would learn a lot.
How does he know everything?
I don't know. It's one of them who just know things.
This is one of the recurring themes of this channel, it feels like. How my dad knows things. And I just don't feel like I'm that kind of person. That's probably not true, though. I know things.
You know things.
There's things I know.
You know things he doesn't know.
Like what to do if you don't know your lines and you realize they're shooting the back instead of the front.
Definitely. Definitely. I didn't even
Just
think of that.
tell them that you prepare. That's the advice.
Actually, I didn't even think of that, but literally your dad had a dream where, like he didn't know what to do and he turned to do it. Oh.
I don't think I didn't let that go straight to my head. I like channeled it right into my head. Right into my head. Into my crown chakra.
Okay. So, yes. Rostov goes to the hospital.
Which is literally the worst place ever.
There's been an outbreak
of typhus.
And people
Why
are
we reading this?
It's very, very, very depressing.
Too soon.
There's like a pungent smell. It was very graphic, the description of it. I felt like I needed to clean myself after. He finds Denisov, he's still alive, but obsessed with this letter that he's trying to write to like prove that he was in the right.
He didn't want to write it, actually.
He was supposed to write this. Didn't he have like his own letter that was like, I was right, and he's like sticking it to the man, and then they're like, no, really, just send this letter. That's an apology. So he gives that to Rostov, and Rostov undertakes it upon himself to take that to the emperor, to get that to the emperor so that Denisov can be pardoned. And then he goes, where are they anyway? I forget. He goes to where the Emperor Napoleon, so Alexander and Napoleon, are meeting to negotiate.
Which was just like casually thrown.
Hi, whatever. That's happening apparently. No one's talking about that. And there he meets up with Boris, who is odious, and is now fraternizing with the French.
Lickspittle.
Yes. Yeah, he's like, it's gone to his head. And he's all like very impressed with himself and his new French buddies.
He literally is like, oh, hey, I didn't know you were coming.
Yeah.
Actually, he's like, excusez-moi. Because he's like practically French.
Very French now. And Rostov is very uncomfortable with all the
French friends.
Yeah, French friends. There you go. And is kind of like awkward he's the awkward one at the party.
He's like, can we have a wood, please? And then they go into the coat closet.
They do. And then he takes a nap in his bed.
Yeah. Because Boris is like, let me just lie down.
Yeah.
Let me just make a nap.
So weird. And then Rostov realizes, because he didn't realize this before, that the Emperor is there.
That the Emperor is the Emperor. That was inexplicable. That was inexplicable.
So he tries to get the letter to him.
And he gets all kinds of awkward and weird.
It's very, yeah.
He like shows up and he's like, walks into a house.
I don't even, whose house was he in that he's like, I have a letter?
I don't know.
And there's a guy getting dressed. And we never understand who that guy is.
He's an army guy.
But why was he directed to that guy's house?
No, that's the house that the Emperor was in.
But who's that guy then?
He's the guy that's getting changed in the Emperor's house. No, there was like obviously the ceremony happening.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like their coat closet.
Right, okay. It's like it's the green room.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
Yes.
And then he gives it to someone else who's like, I'll give it to the Emperor. And there's this big ceremony and fanfare in front of
during which Rostov mingles with the civilians because he's the whole time in civilian dress.
Yeah, and Alexander and Napoleon are there, and Napoleon gives some honor acknowledgement to this Russian soldier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like they're like shows of
very
goodwill.
showy. Yeah. And Rostov doesn't like it. How do I explain that? He smells a stink. You know what I mean? He's like, he sees the hypocrisy of it.
Oh, and he becomes loose at the bar later.
Yeah. And then he drinks a lot that night.
Yeah, and he's like, we don't have brains! I don't have thoughts! You just do what you're told. Okay? Guys? Everybody's? And they're all like, what's this?
Like, keep drinking.
Yes. So he makes a dongle of himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it.
Yeah. That's the end of book 5. Now, book 6. 1808 to 1810.
I wonder which we'll start with.
We're gonna suddenly. Okay. Are we gonna suddenly move around? I don't know.
Okay.
Chapter 1. Prince Andrew had spent 2 years continuously in the country.
All the plans Pierre had attempted on his estates and constantly changing from one thing to another had never accomplished, were carried out by Prince Andrew without display and without perceptible difficulty.
He had, in the highest degree, a practical tenacity which Pierre lacked, and without fuss or strain on his part, this set things going.
On one of his estates, the 300 serfs were liberated and became free agricultural laborers, this being one of the first examples of the kind in Russia. On other estates, the serfs' compulsory labor was commuted for a quit rent. A trained midwife was engaged for Bogucharovo at his expense, and a priest was paid to teach reading and writing to the children of the peasants and household serfs.
Prince Andrew spent half his time at Bald Hills with his father and his son, who was still in the care of nurses. The other half he spent in Bogucharovo. What is it? Bogucharovo Cloister, as his father called Prince Andrew's estate. Despite the indifference to the affairs of the world he had expressed to Pierre, he diligently followed all that went on, received many books, and to his surprise noticed that when he or his father had visitors from Petersburg, the very cortex of his life, these people lagged behind himself.
Cortex?
Didn't I say vortex?
I heard cortex, which is funny.
Cortex. Sure. These people lagged behind himself, who never left the country, in knowledge of what was happening in home and foreign affairs.
Besides being occupied with his estates and reading a great variety of books, Prince Andrew was at this time busy with a critical survey of our last 2 unfortunate campaigns, and with drawing up a proposal for a reform of the army rules and regulations.
In the spring of 1809, he went to visit the Ryazan estates, which had been inherited
the Kalesh, looking at the new grass, the first leaves on the birches, and the first puffs of white spring clouds floating across the clear blue sky. He was not thinking of anything, but looked absent-mindedly and cheerfully from side to side.
They crossed the ferry where he had talked with Pierre the year before.
They went through the muddy village, past threshing floors and green fields of winter rye, downhill where snow still lodged near the bridge, uphill where the clay had been liquefied by the rain, past strips of stubble land and bushes touched with green here and there, and into a birch forest growing on both sides of the road. In the forest it was almost hot. No wind could be felt. The birches with their sticky green leaves were motionless, and lilac-colored flowers and the first blades of green grass were pushing up and lifting last year's leaves. The coarse evergreen color of the small fir trees scattered here and there among the birches was an unpleasant reminder of winter. On entering the forest, the horses began to snort and sweated visibly.
Peter the footman made some remark to the coachman. The latter assented. But apparently the coachman's sympathy was not enough for Peter, and he turned on the box toward his master.
"How pleasant it is, Your Excellency," he said with a respectful smile.
What?
"It's pleasant, Your Excellency."
is he talking about? Thought Prince Andrew. Oh, the spring. I suppose, he thought as he turned round. Yes, really, everything is green already. How early? The birches and cherry and alders, too, are coming out. But the oaks show no sign yet. Ah, here is one oak.
At the edge of the road stood an oak, probably 10 times the age of the birches that formed the forest. It was 10 times as thick and twice as tall as they. It was an enormous tree, its girth twice as great as a man could embrace, and evidently, long ago, some of its branches had been broken off and its bark scarred. With its huge, ungainly limbs sprawling unsymmetrically, and its gnarled hands and fingers, it stood an aged, stern, and scornful monster among the smiling birch trees. It's very aggressive. Only the dead-looking evergreen firs dotted about in the forest, and this oak refused to yield to the charm of spring or notice either the spring or the sunshine.
Spring,
That's
love.
so judgmental. Why are they hating on this tree so much?
On this tree. Notice how the tree had fingers?
Yeah. It's gnarled hands.
I know.
Because God forbid we pass an opportunity to think of hideous hands. He's a handful, yeah. He's got like a weird thing for hands.
Spring, love, happiness, this oak seemed to say. Are you not wary of that stupid, meaningless, constantly repeated fraud?
Jesus.
Always the same and always a fraud. There is no spring, no sun, no happiness. Look at those cramped dead firs, ever the same, and at me too, sticking out my broken and barked fingers just where they have grown, whether it's from my back or my sides. As they have grown, so I stand, and I do not believe in your hopes and your lies.
Someone's projecting like crazy. I don't know who it is, but someone in the forest is projecting like a madman. As he passed through the forest, Prince Andrew turned several times to look at that oak, as if expecting wonder who it is, as if expecting something from it. Under the oak, too, were flowers and grass, but it stood among them scowling, rigid, misshapen, and grim as ever.
Yes, the oak is right. 1,000 times right, thought Prince Andrew. Let others, the young, yield afresh to that fraud, but we know life. Our life is finished.
What is this fucking problem? He needs to go on, that's no problem. A whole sequence of new thoughts, hopeless but mournfully pleasant, rose in his... This is like, how dark is this? That he was like, just sort of blankly in his right brain, like experiencing spring, and he was like, yeah, there's these trees and that trees, and then he just like manifested some horrendous force, and then was like, and felt like oppressed, right? And it's taken everything, and he's like, you're right, I'm dead.
No, he's in a dark place, dark cloud.
He wasn't even in a dark place 2 seconds ago.
I don't know.
Yes, our life is finished. Sorry. Oh, I think I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
During this journey, he, as it were, considered his life afresh and arrived at his old conclusion, restful in its hopelessness, that it was not for him to begin anything anew, but that he must live out his life content to do no harm and not disturbing himself or desiring anything. Cool.
That's one perspective. You can
That was chapter 1.
perhaps look into it. This is really the boost in our spirits.
This is what I was hoping.
Chapter 2. Prince Andrew had to see the marshal of the nobility for the district in connection with the affairs of the Ryazan estate of which he was trustee. This marshal was Count Ilya Rostov, and in the middle of May, Prince Andrew went to visit him.
It was now hot spring weather. The whole forest was already clothed in green. It was dusty and so hot that on passing near water, one longed to bathe.
Prince Andrew, depressed and preoccupied with the business about which he had to speak to the marshal, was driving up the avenue in the grounds of the Rostovs' house at Otradno. He heard merry girlish cries behind some trees on the right, and saw a group of girls running to cross the path of his caleche. Ahead of the rest and nearer to him ran a dark-haired, remarkably slim, pretty girl in a yellow chintz dress, with a white handkerchief on her head from under which loose locks of hair escaped. The girl was shouting something, but seeing that he was a stranger, ran back laughing without looking at him.
Who's going to remind him that he's near his death? Is someone going to?
Hmm?
Someone going to remember to tell him that he might as well just lie down and die? Okay. Well, I just heard a lot about some pretty girl wearing maybe yellow.
Yeah.
Okay. Suddenly, see? He did not know why. He felt a pang. Danger, Will. The day was so beautiful, the sun so bright, everything around so gay, but that slim, pretty girl did not know or wish to know of his existence, and was contented and cheerful in her own separate, probably foolish, but bright and happy life. What is she so glad about? What is she thinking of? Not of the military regulations or of the arrangement of the rise and serfs' quit rents. But what is she thinking? Why is she so happy? Prince Andrew asked himself with instinctive curiosity.
In 1809, Count Ilya Rostov was living at Otrádnoe, just as he had done in former years, that is, entertaining almost the whole province with hunts, theatricals, dinners, and music. He was glad to see Prince Andrew, as he was to see any new visitor, and insisted on his staying the night.
During the dull day, in the course of which he was entertained by his elderly hosts and by the more important of the visitors, the old count's house was crowded on account of an approaching name day. Prince Andrew repeatedly glanced at Natasha, gay and laughing among the younger members of the company, and asked himself each time, what is she thinking about? Why is she so quiet?
That night, alone in new surroundings, he was long unable to sleep. He read a while and then put out his candle, but relit it. It was hot in the room, the inside shutters of which were closed. He was cross with the stupid old man, as he called Rostov, who had made him stay by assuring him that some necessary documents had not yet arrived from town, and he was vexed with himself for having stayed.
He got up and went to the window to open it. As soon as he opened the shutters, the moonlight, as if it had long been watching for this, burst into the room. He opened the casement. The night was fresh, bright, and very still. Just before the window was a row of pollard trees, looking black on one side and with a silvery light on the other. Beneath the trees grew some kind of lush, wet, bushy vegetation, with silver-lit leaves and stems here and there. Farther back, beyond the dark trees, a roof glittered with dew. To the right was a leafy tree with brilliantly white trunk and branches, and above it shone the moon, nearly at its full, in a pale, almost starless spring sky. Prince Andrew leaned his elbows on the window ledge, and his eyes rested on that sky.
His room was on the first floor. Those in the rooms above were also awake. He heard female voices overhead.
Just one more, said a girlish voice above him, which Prince Andrew recognized at once.
When are you coming to bed? Replied another.
What's the last time?
Two girlish voices sang a musical passage, the end of some song.
Oh, how lovely. Now go to sleep, and there's an end of it.
You go to sleep, but I can't, said the first voice, coming nearer to the window. She was evidently leaning right out, for the rustle of her dress and even her breathing could be heard. Everything was stone still, with the moon and its light and the shadows. Prince Andrew, too, dared not stir for fear of betraying his unintentional presence.
Sonia! Sonia! He again heard the first speaker. Oh, how can you sleep? Only look how glorious it is. Ah, how glorious! Do wake up, Sonia, she said, almost with tears in her voice. There never was such a lovely night before.
Sonia made some reluctant reply.
Do just come and see what a moon! Oh, how lovely! Come here, darling, sweetheart, come here. There, you see? I feel like sitting down on my heels, putting my arms around my knees like this, straining tight as possible, and flying away like this.
Take care, you'll fall out.
He heard the sound of a scuffle, and Sonia's disapproving voice. It's past 1 o'clock.
Oh, you want to spoil things for me. All right, go, go!
Again, all was silent, but Prince Andrew knew she was still sitting there. From time to time, he heard a soft rustle and at times a sigh.
God, what does it mean? She suddenly exclaimed. To bed then, if it must be, and she slammed the casement.
For her, I might as well not exist. Way to make it about
Such a narcissist!
Jesus. Like, okay. There's nothing else to be said about that.
Yeah.
For her, I might as well not exist. No, I can't leave it at that. Because she doesn't even know he's there. And he's like, sort of taking offense at not being acknowledged, even though he was silent, and pretending not to be there. Okay. I might as well not exist, thought Prince Andrew while he listened to her voice, for some reason expecting yet fearing that she might say something about him. Oh my God.
He wants her to be like,
there she is again, as if it were on purpose, thought he.
she's just doing this for your benefit, Andrea. It's all a show.
Actually, that's probably true in the fucking Tolstoy.
In his soul there suddenly arose such an unexpected turmoil of youthful thoughts and hopes, contrary to the whole tenor of his life, that unable to explain his condition to himself, he lay down and fell asleep at once.
Chapter 3. Next morning, having taken leave of no one but the Count, and not waiting for the ladies to appear, Prince Andrew set off for home.
It was already the beginning of June when, on his return journey, he drove into the birch forest where the gnarled old oak had made so strange and memorable an impression on him. In the forest, the harness bells sounded yet more muffled than they had done 6 weeks before, for now all was thick, shady, and dense.
I just want to say that narcissism, that the projection is like a classic.
Thank you. He also projected fully onto like that angle in his wife's face.
Oh yeah.
In the forest, the harness bells sounded yet more muffled than they had done 6 weeks before, for now all was thick, shady, and dense, and the young firs dotted about in the forest did not jar on the general beauty, but, lending themselves to the mood around, were delicately green with fluffy young shoots.
The whole day had been hot. Somewhere a storm was gathering, but only a small cloud had scattered some raindrops lightly, sprinkling the road and the sappy leaves. The left side of the forest was dark in the shade, the right side glittered in the sunlight, wet and shiny and scarcely swayed by the breeze. Everything was in blossom. The nightingales trilled and their voices reverberated now near, now far away.
Yes, here in this forest was that oak with which I agreed.
Oh, my frack.
His friend, thought Prince Andrew. Where is it? He again wondered, gazing at the left side of the road without recognizing it. He looked with admiration at the very oak he sought.
Oh, please.
The old oak, quite transfigured, spreading out a canopy of sappy dark green foliage, stood wrapped and slightly trembling in the rays of the evening sun. Neither gnarled fingers, nor old scars, nor old doubts and sorrows were any of them in evidence now. Through the hard century-old bark, even where there were no twigs, leaves had sprouted such as one could hardly believe the old veteran could have produced.
Yes, it is the same oak. By an unreasoning springtime feeling, joy and renewal. All the best moments of his life suddenly rose to his memory. Austerlitz with the lofty heavens, his wife's dead, reproachful. That was the best moment of his life? His wife's dead face?
Not sure.
All the best moments.
I know,
of
and
his life
then we list moments.
Suddenly rose to his memory. Austerlitz with the lofty heavens.
Mm-hmm.
His wife's dead, reproachful
Maybe
face.
it's not. Maybe this is like a translational thing, and it's not the best. It's like the most significant moments.
Okay. Pierre at the ferry. That girl thrilled by the beauty of the night, and that night itself, and the moon, and all this rushed suddenly to his mind.
I wouldn't say any of those are like his rapturous best moments.
They are.
I don't think they are. Like, they're not his happy moments. The ferry wasn't a happy moment for him.
He doesn't have happy moments.
Right, that's true.
But this is what he has.
So sad. Like his child. Anyway, okay. All those moments.
It doesn't help that I don't remember him in the beginning of the story.
Yeah, and he wasn't very happy at the beginning.
I wish I could read without going right on you. Yes, thank you. It is a question.
No, life is not over at 31, Prince Andrew suddenly decided finally and decisively. It is not enough for me to know what I have in me. Everyone must know it. Pierre and that young girl who wanted to fly away into the sky, everyone must know me.
Oh my God.
So that my life may not be lived for myself alone while others live so apart from it, but so that it may be reflected in them all, and they and I may live in harmony.
On reaching home, Prince Andrew decided to go to Petersburg that autumn and found all sorts of reasons for this decision. A whole series of sensible and logical considerations showing it to be essential for him to go to Petersburg, and even to re-enter the service, kept springing up in his mind. He could not now understand how he could ever even have doubted the necessity of taking an active share in life, just as a month before he had not understood how the idea of leaving the quiet country could ever enter his head. It now seemed clear to him that all his experience of life must be senselessly wasted unless he applied it to some kind of work and again played an active part in life. He did not even remember how formally, on the strength of similar wretched logical arguments, it had seemed obvious that he would be degrading himself if he now, after the lessons he had had in his life, allowed himself to believe in the possibility of being useful and in the possibility of happiness or love. Now reason suggested quite the opposite. After that journey to Ryazan, he found the country dull. His former pursuits no longer interested him, and often, when sitting alone in his study, he got up, went to the mirror, and gazed a long time at his own face. I can't with this guy.
As one does.
Then he would turn away to the portrait of his dead Lisa. Okay, I for a second thought that the portrait was of her dead. Okay.
Remember the best moment of my life.
Yeah. Who, with hair curled a la grecque, looked tenderly and gaily at him out of the gilt frame. She did not now say those former terrible words to him, but looked simply, merrily, and inquisitively at him. And Prince Andrew, crossing his arms behind him, long paced the room, now frowning, now smiling, as he reflected on those irrational, inexpressible thoughts, secret as a crime, which altered his whole life and were connected with Pierre, with fame, with the girl at the window, the oak, and the women's beauty, and love. And if anyone came into his room at such moments, he was particularly cold, stern, and, above all, unpleasantly logical.
My dear Princess Mary, entering at such a moment.
But, Prince Andrew would reply at such times very dryly to his sister. He could go out in his smock, but as it is cold, he must wear warm clothes which were designed for that purpose. That is what follows from the fact that it is cold, and not that a child who needs fresh air should remain at home. He would add with extreme logic, as if punishing someone for those secret illogical emotions that stirred within him.
Such moments, Princess Mary would think how intellectual work dries men out.
Chapter 4. Prince Andrew arrived in Petersburg in August 1809. It was the time when the youthful Speranski was at the zenith of his fame, and his reforms were being pushed forward with the greatest energy. I'll look up who that is.
Mm-hmm.
Should we look up who that is?
Speranski.
Yeah. That same August, the emperor was thrown from his caleche, injured his leg, and remained 3 weeks at Peterhof, receiving Speranski every day and no one else. At that time, the two famous decrees were being prepared that so agitated society.
Mikhail Speranski was a Russian reformist during the reign of Alexander I of Russia, to whom he was a close advisor.
Okay.
He is referred to as the father of Russian liberalism.
Okay, cool. At that time, the two famous decrees were being prepared that so agitated society. Abolishing court ranks, thank God we can stop calling people, and introducing examinations to qualify for the grades of collegiate assessor and state councillor. And not merely these, but a whole state constitution intended to change the existing order of government in Russia, legal, administrative, and financial, from the Council of State down to the district tribunals. Now those vague liberal dreams with which the Emperor Alexander had ascended the throne, and which he had tried to put into effect with the aid of his associates, Czartoryski, Novosiltsev, Kochubey, and Stroganov, whom he himself in jest had called his Comité de Salut, I don't know what that means. Right, but I don't know what that means. Were taking shape and being realized.
Now all these men were replaced by Speranski on the civil side, and Arakcheev on the military. Soon after his arrival, Prince Andrew, as a gentleman of the chamber, presented himself at court and at a levee. The emperor, though he met him twice, did not favor him with a single word. It had always seemed to Prince Andrew before that he was antipathetic to the emperor, and that the latter disliked his face and personality generally. And in the cold, repellent glance of the emperor gave him, he now found further confirmation of this surmise. The courtiers explained the emperor's neglect of him by his majesty's displeasure at Bolkonsky's not having served since 1805.
I know myself that one cannot help one's sympathies and antipathies, thought Prince Andrew, so it will not do to present my proposal for the reform of the army regulations to the emperor personally, but the project will speak for itself.
He mentioned what he had written to an old field marshal, a friend of his father's. The field marshal made an appointment to see him, received him graciously, and promised to inform the emperor. A few days later, Prince Andrew received notice that he was to go to see the Minister of War, Count Arakcheev.
On the appointed day, Prince Andrew entered Count Arakcheev's waiting room at 9 in the morning.
He did not know Arakcheev personally. He had never seen him, and all he had heard of him inspired him with but little respect for the man.
He is Minister of War, a man trusted by the Emperor, and I need not concern myself about his personal qualities. He has been commissioned to consider my project, so he alone can get it adopted, thought Prince Andrew as he waited among a number of important and unimportant people in Count Arakcheev's waiting room.
During his service, chiefly as an adjutant, Prince Andrew had seen the ante-rooms of many important men, and the different types of such rooms were well known to him. Count Arakcheev's ante-room had quite a special character. The faces of the unimportant people awaiting their turn for an audience showed embarrassment and servility. The faces of those of higher rank expressed a common feeling of awkwardness, covered by a mask of unconcern and ridicule of themselves, their situation, and the person for whom they were waiting. Some walked thoughtfully up and down, others whispered and laughed. Prince Andrew heard the nickname Sila Andreevich, an important personage, evidently feeling offended at having to wait so long, sat crossing and uncrossing his legs and smiling contemptuously to himself.
But the moment the door opened, one feeling alone appeared on all faces, that of fear. Prince Andrew for the second time asked the adjutant on duty to take in his name, but received an ironical look and was told that his turn would come in due course. After some others had been shown in and out of the minister's room by the adjutant on duty, an officer who struck Prince Andrew by his humiliated and frightened air was admitted at that terrible door. This officer's audience lasted a long time. Then suddenly, the grating sound of a harsh voice was heard from the other side of the door, and the officer, with pale face and trembling lips, came out and passed through the waiting room, clutching his head.
After this, Prince Andrew was conducted to the door, and the officer on duty said in a whisper, "To the right, at the window."
Prince Andrew entered a plain, tidy room and saw at the table a man of 40 with a long waist, a long, closely cropped head, deep wrinkles, scowling brows above dull greenish hazel eyes, and an overhanging red nose. Arakcheev turned his head towards him without looking at him.
"What is your petition?" asked Arakcheev.
"I am not petitioning, Your Excellency," returned Prince Andrew quietly.
Arakcheev's eyes turned toward him.
Sit down, said he. Prince Volkonsky.
I am not petitioning about anything. His Majesty the Emperor has deigned to send Your Excellency a project submitted by me.
You see, my dear sir, I have read your project, interrupted Arakchev, uttering only the first words amiably, and then, again without looking at Prince Andrew, relapsing gradually into a tone of grumbling contempt. You are proposing new military laws. There are many laws, but no one to carry out the old ones. Nowadays, everybody designs laws. It is easier writing than doing.
I came at His Majesty the Emperor's wish to learn from Your Excellency how you propose to deal with the memorandum I have presented, said Prince Andrew politely.
I have endorsed a resolution on your memorandum and sent it to the committee. I do not approve of it, said Arakchev, rising and taking a paper from his writing table. Here. And he handed it to Prince Andrew.
Across the paper was scrawled in pencil, without capital letters, misspelled, and without punctuation, unsoundly constructed because resembles an imitation of the French military code, and from the Articles of War needlessly deviating.
To what committee has the memorandum been referred? Inquired Prince Andrew.
To the Committee on Army Regulations, and I have recommended that Your Honor should be appointed a member, but without a salary.
Prince Andrew smiled.
I don't want one.
A member without salary, repeated Arakchev. I have the honor, eh? Call the next one. Who else is there? He shouted, bowing to Prince Andrew. Oh, that was weird.
It was weird. He's like, yeah, your memorandum sucks.
So I forwarded it.
So, and you get to become a member, but we're not going to pay. Okay. Chapter 5.
Book 5, the Book of Bewilderment.
Book 6.
Book 6. Damn it, that screws it up. That screws it up.
Chapter 5. While waiting for the announcement of his appointment to the committee, Prince Andrew looked up his former acquaintances, particularly those who knew to be in power and whose aid he might need. In Petersburg, he now experienced the same feeling he had had on the eve of the battle, when troubled by anxious curiosity and irresistibly attracted to the ruling circles where the future, on which the fate of millions depended, was being shaped. From the irritation of the older men, the curiosity of the uninitiated, the reserve of the uninitiated, the hurry and preoccupation of everyone, and the innumerable committees and commissions of whose existence he learned every day, he felt that now, in 1809, here in Petersburg, a vast civil conflict was in preparation, the commander-in-chief of which was a mysterious person he did not know, but who was supposed to be a man of genius, Speranski. And this movement of reconstruction of which Prince Andrew had a vague idea, and Speranski, its chief promoter, began to interest him so keenly that the question of the army regulations quickly receded to a secondary place in his consciousness.
Prince Andrew was placed in the highest and most diverse Petersburg circles of the day. The reforming party cordially welcomed and courted him, in the first place because he was reputed to be clever and very well read, and secondly because by liberating his serfs he had obtained the reputation of being a liberal. The party of the old and dissatisfied, who censured the innovations, turned to him expecting his sympathy in their disapproval of the reforms simply because he was the son of his father. The feminine society world welcomed him gladly because he was rich, distinguished, a good match, and almost a newcomer, with a halo of romance on account of his supposed death and the tragic loss of his wife. Besides this, the general opinion of all who had known him previously was that he had greatly improved during these last 5 years, having softened and grown more manly, lost his former affectation, pride, and contemptuous irony, and acquired the serenity that comes with years. Not years. People talked about him, were interested in him, and wanted to meet him.
The day after his interview with Count Arakchev, Prince Andrew spent the evening at Count Kochubey's. He told the Count of his interview with Sila Andreevich Kochubey spoke of Arakcheev by that nickname with the same vague irony Prince Andrew had noticed in the Minister of War's anteroom.
Mon cher, even in this case, you can't do without Michael Mikhailovich Speranski. He manages everything. I'll speak to him. He has promised to come this evening.
What has Speranski to do with the army regulations? Asked Prince Andrew.
Kochubey shook his head smilingly as if surprised at Bolkonski's simplicity.
We were talking to him about you a few days ago, Kochubey continued, and about your freed plowmen.
Oh, is it you, Prince, who have freed yourself? Said an old man of Catherine's day, turning contemptuously towards Bolkonsky.
It was a small estate that brought in no profit, replied Prince Andrew, trying to extenuate his actions so as not to irritate the old man uselessly.
Afraid of being late. I don't know what that means, said the old man, looking at Kochubey.
There's one thing I don't understand, he continued. Who will plow the land if they are set free? It is easy to write laws, but difficult to rule. Just the same as now. I ask you, Count, who will be heads of the departments when everybody has to pass examinations?
Those who pass the examinations, I suppose, replied Kochubey, crossing his legs and glancing around.
Well, I've Piryanchnikov serving under me, a splendid man, a priceless man, but he's 60. Is he to go up for examination?
Yes, that's a difficulty, as education is not at all general, but...
Count Kochubey did not finish. He rose, took Prince Andrew by the arm, and went to meet a tall, bald, fair man of about 40 with a large, open forehead and a long face of unusual and peculiar whiteness. He was just entering. The newcomer wore a blue swallowtail coat with a cross suspended from his neck and a star on his left breast. It was Speranski. Prince Andrew recognized him at once and felt a throb within him, as happens at critical moments of life. Whether it was from respect, envy, or anticipation, he did not know. Speranski's whole figure was of a peculiar type that made him easily recognizable. In the society in which Prince Andrew lived, he had never seen anyone who, together with awkward and clumsy gestures, possessed such calmness and self-assurance. He had never seen so resolute yet gentle an expression as that in those half-closed, rather humid eyes, or so firm a smile that expressed nothing. Nor had he heard such a refined, smooth, soft voice. Above all, he had never seen such delicate whiteness of face or hands. Hands which were broad, very plump, soft, and white.
I'm sorry, is it just me or is that disgusting?
I mean, I feel like this deserves its own coloring book of just the hands in War and Peace. It makes them sound like little rolls, like little bread rolls.
Yeah.
Such whiteness and softness Prince Andrew had only seen on the faces of soldiers who had been long in hospital.
That's alarming.
This was Speranski, Secretary at Erfurt, where he had more than once met and talked with Napoleon.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. This extensive description, does it give you any kind of clear image of this fucking person?
It's not very cohesive. Apparently.
It's not, right? Because I was like, we are hearing a lot of words about him, and I'm not, he's white.
He's bald, he's very white.
He's super white.
He has humid eyes. He smiles without revealing anything. He's very soft hands. So moisturized. I don't like it.
So why does it have to
We're
be?
gonna have nightmares of hands after this.
I mean, maybe. Why is everyone like?
Look at those plump hands.
It's disgusting.
What is plump hands? I don't.
You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of people who have really bad nutrition.
Really?
Yeah.
I think if they're plump, they're getting a lot of nutrition.
Those aren't necessarily horrible. There's this guy at the gym. This is going to be a really effed up thing to say. There's this guy I see at the gym sometimes. He used to. see at the gym sometimes. He's got this like, he looks sort of scary, and it was difficult for me to pinpoint why it was bothering me, or like why it was just like seemed disturbing. Because I was like, I felt worried about him, looking at him, and I asked Ray, I was like, I'm not freaked out by this person, and he was like, oh, it's too much sodium or something. And I was like, really?
Ray could just diagnose it.
Basically, he was like he's retaining so much water, and then that I realized that like, you know, when like, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but when bodies are in water for like a long time, they get like a little odd, and I guess they like swell. Yeah. That's what it looked like, and his color wasn't great either.
What was it?
It was like a disturbing white. It sounded like this kind of white. Like he was, I think, half Asian. Not that, like I didn't get the impression that his color, it was more the quality of the color.
Like underneath the skin is what's kind of off.
Yeah, like something looked wrong about it. That's what I think about every time he's like, pull on. I think that's like that.
No one so far has bony fingers, except for the oak.
Fuck that oak. That oak's in dick.
Who's looking at people's hands?
I look at people's hands all the time.
It's implying that Andrew is like sussing up.
Do you not look at people's hands? I could not be involved with somebody that I don't, whose hands I don't have. Like literally that single thing, it's like, no. It's a deal breaker.
What kind of hands do you have?
Solid.
Yeah.
And like sort of squarish.
Yeah, like too spindly.
Too spindly I don't like. Mine are very spindly. But I don't know, actually. There are certain like nail shapes that I don't like. Things that come out of your mouth.
Nail cleanliness, that's the thing.
I don't mind.
You don't have to be impeccable. Really long nails on the guy?
No.
Mm-mm.
No. Yeah, I don't like when they're like narrow.
It's solid and like not too hairy, right?
Yeah, I don't really. I'm not. Yeah.
Like hairy knuckles. I can't.
I don't know how much
I would notice it. It was like furry. I'd be like, okay.
You say that about everything.
You know, but it doesn't make sense.
I don't like someone who's so
such
smooth.
A funny thing to judge.
Really?
My hands are okay. I don't think they're great. I think you have nicer hands than I do. I have gigantic hands next to you. Well, look at those. There's so much. It's big.
What are you talking about? Are the bottoms together?
Yeah.
The same width?
Yeah.
So that's not that much bigger.
No, isn't it though? Yours seems very symmetrical. Mine is kind of.
Really? My family's always talking about how I have long fingers.
Fingers in your palm? Really? Yeah. What? I don't see that at all.
Really?
No, I think
there was some time that I was pointing. Yeah. I saw a picture of me pointing, and then I was like, whoa. Out of my hand.
I know, I just curves. Anyway, okay.
Was that
hands?
Huh?
I want this like book of hands.
I don't want this book of hands. I I don't want to book with these hands. He says he looks like the color of people who are in hospital.
Yeah, that's a pretty strange description. So they haven't seen sunlight in a long time? Is that what he's referring to?
Wouldn't that just be indoors for a long time?
Is it the whiteness of like people who have been sick? I guess so.
Like that's a particular whiteness.
But like, long again, that's where I was like whiteness and softness. Softness, I'm like, oh, so soft is generally good, isn't it? Or like unworked, you know? Like, okay, so he's kept, you know, he doesn't have to work with his hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the hospital.
What do you mean?
Like, I don't think of that as being, like, softness, I don't relate to being sickly. That's all.
Oh, I do.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It's like he's been in a cave the whole time. Cool. Softness. Speranski did not shift his eyes from one face to another, as people involuntarily do on entering a large company, and was in no hurry to speak. He spoke slowly with assurance that he would be listened to, and looked only at the person with whom he was conversing.
Prince Andrew followed Speranski's every word and movement with particular attention, as happens to some people, especially to men who judge those near to them severely. He always, on meeting anyone new, especially anyone whom, like Speranski, he knew by reputation, expected to discover in him the perfection of human qualities.
Another classic sign of narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like, it's kind of bizarre.
Narcissism.
Are you really asking?
No.
Because it's a really obvious answer.
Yeah, okay.
If you think about it for a second.
Never mind.
Yeah, because having interacted with them. Classic. Speranski told Kochube he was sorry he had been unable to come sooner, as he had been detained at the palace. He did not say that the emperor had kept him, and Prince Andrew noticed this affectation of modesty. Of course, you can see the affectation. When Kochube introduced Prince Andrew, Speranski slowly turned his eyes to Bolkonsky with his customary smile and looked at him in silence.
So why is that a classic? Why is that a classic feature of narcissism?
The thing that I was saying?
Yeah.
Expect to discover the perfection of human qualities, because that means the person is an idea, it's an image.
Not a real person.
Yeah. So it's like putting someone on a pedestal, and this has come up before something.
Yeah. And then when like this is
and then
what happened with Napoleon, and then when he sees through them, it's like they're nothing.
Yeah, but he's not seeing through, like he thinks of it as through them.
Right.
But really, it's just them being a human being. Like no one is going to be an example, like no human is an example of perfection. And that's one of the main things of narcissism, is that you interface with an image. And anyone attached to that image, God help them, based on their humanity, the fact that they are a person and not a concept, is inherently going to be disciplined.
Boy. Speranski told Kochube he was sorry he had been unable to come sooner, as he had been detained at the palace.
We read that already.
Oh, we did?
Yeah. I'm very glad.
Okay. I'm very glad to make your acquaintance. I had heard of you, as everyone has, he said after a pause.
Kochube said a few words about the reception Iraq chief had given Bolkonsky. Speranski smiled more markedly.
The chairman of the Committee on Army Regulations is my good friend, Monsieur Magnitsky, he said, fully articulating every word and syllable. And if you like, I can put you in touch with him. He paused at the full stop. I hope you will find him sympathetic and ready to cooperate in promoting all that is reasonable.
A circle soon formed around Speranski, and the old man who had talked about his subordinate Pryanitchnikov, addressed a question to him.
Prince Andrew, without joining in the conversation, watched every movement of Speranski's. This man, not long since an insignificant divinity student, who now, Bolkonsky thought, held in his hands, those plump white hands, the fate of Russia. Prince Andrew was struck by the extraordinarily disdainful composure with which Speranski answered the old man. He appeared to address condescending words to him from an immeasurable height. When the old man began to speak too loud, Speranski smiled and said he could not judge of the advantage or disadvantage of what pleased the sovereign.
Having talked for a little while in the general circle, Speranski rose and, coming up to Prince Andrew, took him along to the other end of the room. It was clear that he thought it necessary to interest himself in Bolkonsky.
I had no chance to talk with you, Prince, during the animated conversation in which that venerable gentleman involved me, he said with a mildly contemptuous smile, as if intimating by that smile that he and Prince Andrew understood the insignificance of the people with whom he had just been talking. This flattered Prince Andrew. I have known of you for a long time, first from your action with regard to your serfs, a first example, of which it is very desirable that there should be more imitators, and secondly, because you are one of those gentlemen of the chamber who have not considered themselves offended by the new decree concerning the ranks allotted to courtiers, which is causing so much gossip and tittle-tattle.
I just want to add that it's kind of weird that Andrew, fought a big fight with Pierre.
Yeah.
When he was, coming up with all of these ideas.
Oh, definitely.
And then, basically, it's stealing to, not give somebody...
Was it explained why he did that? Why did he free his serfs?
Because he was persuaded by Pierre.
He was, okay.
Which it seemed like at the end that he was definitely hearing. He seemed like he was hearing him.
That's true.
But I don't think he gave him the gratification of being like, you know what? I'm actually rethinking this. And certainly when this virtue is being extolled by people, he's like, oh, this is not good. He's not like, oh, there's this other guy who's also doing it. Or yeah, I spoke to this so-and-so. Who's not a so-and-so.
Credit Pierre. It's not like Pierre came up with the idea.
I mean, from what I can tell based on, he said that this was one of the first examples of its kind in Russia. So Pierre might have been the first person to.
Oh, but Pierre also didn't free his serfs.
He was trying.
Yeah, but he didn't. No, sorry. I just remembered that. Yeah.
He was trying, I believe.
Yeah, and then his steward
right.
was saying how difficult it was.
And undermined him.
Yeah.
Just feels whatever. Okay. No, said Prince Andrew. The question was about him not making a big deal of dissolving the court ranks.
Right.
No, said Prince Andrew. My father did not wish me to take advantage of the privilege. I began the service from the lower grade.
Your father, a man of the last century, merely reestablished natural justice.
I think, however, that these condemnations have some ground, returned Prince Andrew, trying to resist Speranski's influence, of which he began to be conscious. He did not like to agree with him in everything and felt a wish to contradict. Though he usually spoke easily and well, he felt a difficulty in expressing himself now while talking with Speranski. He was too much absorbed in observing the famous man's personality.
Grounds of personal ambition, maybe, Speranski put in quietly.
And of state interest, to some extent, said Prince Andrew.
What do you mean? Asked Speranski quietly, lowering his eyes.
I am an admirer of Montesquieu, replied Prince Andrew, and his idea that le principe des monarchies et l'honneur me paraît incontestable. Oh, there's so many words. Certains droits et
Certains droits et privilèges de la noblesse me paraissent être des moyens de soutenir ce sentiment. So, which translates to, The principle of monarchies is honor seems to me incontestable. Certain rights and privileges for the aristocracy appear to me a means of maintaining that sentiment. Okay. The smile vanished from Speranski's white face, which was much improved by the change. Probably Prince Andrew's thought interested him.
Si vous envisagez la question sous ce... Can we just read the translation?
Yeah. If you regard the question from that point of view.
He began, pronouncing French with evident difficulty and speaking even slower than in Russian, but quite calmly.
Speranski went on to say that honor, l'honneur, cannot be upheld by privileges harmful to the service. That honor, l'honneur, is either a negative concept of not doing what is blameworthy, or it is a source of emulation in pursuit of commendation and rewards, which recognize it. His arguments were concise, simple, and clear.
I don't know if that's true. Are you following?
That honor is simply like the absence of punishment or the pursuit of rewards.
I'm not following the arguments. I don't know whether to just persevere or go back.
No. The principle of monarchies is honor. Seems to me incontestable. Certain rights and privileges for the aristocracy appear to me a means of maintaining the honor is either cannot be upheld by privileges harmful to the service.
What service?
It sounds kind of like it's corrupted by the ranks. The people achieve honor from up high, where like the rules are slightly bent. And that's what it's coming up.
The part that's confusing me is that Andrew is saying, I kind of agree with the condemnations.
Oh.
Right? That's where it starts.
He does?
Yeah.
That these condemnations have some ground. Yeah. Yeah.
And Speranski says grounds of personal ambition, maybe. And then he's like, and of state interest to some extent. What do you mean? I don't see how this... Maybe it's... I don't know. But I don't see how that is in the interest of the state.
Yeah, it seems like there's a... they're using something as a reward system. Honor, like bestowing honor on people and ranks and all of that. That is something to motivate.
I don't have the translation. Can you read that bit again?
Yeah. The principle of monarchies is honor. Seems to me incontestable. Certain rights and privileges for the aristocracy appear to me a means of maintaining that sentiment.
That they are honorable. Is that the sentiment?
Is honor, yeah.
So that they are people of honor.
principle of monarchies is honor. It's such a weird sentence. I think it's like that's how you bestow honor on people is you give. I'm not sure.
It sounds to me like it's like there are distinctions of honor. So like with the title comes the assumption that you are a person of honor.
Mm-hmm.
And that with the title also come these like little perks and privileges that serve to uphold that perception, that image. And then he's like, if you see it that way, which I don't understand what the point is there. And then he says, honor can't be upheld by privileges harmful to the service. That's not a helpful word because like, I don't actually know what he's talking about, the service.
Maybe the service is the honor. I'm not sure.
I feel bad for anyone who gets it and is watching.
And it's like, duh. And is either a negative concept of not doing what is blameworthy, or is a source of emulation, pursuit of commendation, or rewards which recognize it.
I think it's quite funny that he says his arguments are concise, simple, and clear. A negative concept of not doing what is blameworthy, like the fucking not negative concept of what is not blameworthy. That's a triple negative.
I'm just looking at what his reforms were. Speranski. Speranski and Napoleon discussed a possible Russian administrative reform. In his projects of reform, Speranski envisaged a constitutional system based on a series of Duma, the cantonal assembly, electing the Duma of the district, Duma of the districts electing that of the province or government, and these electing the Duma of the empire. As a mediating power between the autocrat and the Duma, there was to be a nominated council of state. From this plan, the Council of the Empire came into existence in January 1810. Spoiler! The Council dominated the constitutional history of Russia in the 19th century. In the early years of the 20th, the Duma of the Empire, created in 1905, and the Institution of Local Self-Government, created in 1864, were two of the reforms proposed by him. Speranski's plan also contributed to the constitutions granted by Alexander to Finland and Poland. I don't think that was helpful.
Nope.
Cool.
Let's just be cool.
Yeah, okay. An institution upholding honor, the source of emulation, is one similar to the Légion d'honneur of the great Emperor Napoleon. Not harmful, but helpful to the success of the service, but not a class or court privilege.
I do not dispute that, but it cannot be denied that court privileges have attained the same end, returned Prince Andrew. Every courtier considers himself bound to maintain his...
Not the privilege, Prince, said Speranski, indicating by a smile that he wished to finish amiably an argument which was embarrassing for his companion. If you will do me the honor of calling on me on Wednesday, he added, I will, after talking with Magnitsky, let you know what may interest you, and shall also have the pleasure of a more detailed chat with you.
Closing his eyes, he bowed à la Française. Without taking leave and trying to attract as little attention as possible, he left the room.
Chapter 6.
My head hurts. I can't go on.
No?
How long have we been doing this? It feels like eons.
Forevers. I think we started around 7.
I can't read the time though.
It's 8:51.
Oh my god.
Goodness!
Almost 2 hours.
Sorry?
Well, if it was 7.
Yeah, it was a little after 7.
A little after 7. So
12
we're closer
past.
to 1
12
and a half
past.
hours. We've read 5 chapters. How long is this chapter?
It's short. It's 6 pages.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it.
Okay. Chapitre 6. During the first weeks of his stay in Petersburg, Prince Andrew felt the whole trend of thought he had formed during his life of seclusion quite overshadowed by the trifling cares that engrossed him in that city.
On returning home in the evening, he would jot down in his notebook 4 or 5 necessary calls or appointments for certain hours. The mechanism of life, the arrangement of the day so as to be in time everywhere, absorbed the greater part of his vital energy. He did nothing, did not even think or find time to think, but only talked and talked successfully of what he had thought while in the country.
He sometimes noticed with dissatisfaction that he repeated the same remark on the same day in different circles. But he was so busy for whole days together that he had no time to notice that he was thinking of nothing.
As he had done on their first meeting at Kobuche's, Speranski produced a strong impression on Prince Andrew on the Wednesday when he received him tete-a-tete at his own house and talked to him long and confidentially.
To Bolkonsky, so many people appeared contemptible and insignificant creatures, and he so longed to find in someone the living ideal of that perfection toward which he strove, that he readily...
Narcissism, 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 narcissism.
That he readily believed that in Speranski he had found this ideal of a perfectly rational and virtuous...
Oh, I'm sure he readily believed that. Sorry.
Had Speranski sprung from the same class as himself and possessed the same breeding and traditions, Bolkonsky would soon have discovered his weak, human, unheroic sides. But as it was, Speranski's strange and logical turn of mind inspired him with respect all the more because he did not quite understand him. Moreover, Speranski, either because he appreciated the other's capacity or because he considered it necessary to win him to his side, showed off his dispassionate, calm reasonableness before Prince Andrew and flattered him with that subtle flattery which goes hand in hand with self-assurance and consists in a tacit assumption that one's companion is the only man besides oneself capable of understanding the folly of the rest of mankind and the reasonableness and profundity of one's own ideals.
During their long conversation on Wednesday evening, Speranski more than once remarked, "We regard everything that is above the common level of rooted custom," or with a smile, "but we want the wolves to be fed and the sheep to be safe," or "they cannot understand this," and all in a way that seemed to say, "We, you and I, understand that they are what they are and who we are." What they are and who we are.
Mm-hmm. Right. The first long conversation with Speranski only strengthened in Prince Andrew the feeling he had experienced toward him at their first meeting. He saw in him a remarkable, clear-thinking man of vast intellect who by his energy and persistence had attained power, which he was using solely for the welfare of Russia. In Prince Andrew's eyes, Speranski was the man he would himself have wished to be, one who explained all the facts of life reasonably, considered important only what was rational, and was capable of applying the standard of reason to everything. Everything seemed so simple and clear in Speranski's about everything. He replied and argued. It was only because he wished to maintain his independence and not submit to Speranski's opinions entirely. Everything was right, and everything was as it should be. Only one thing disconcerted Prince Andrew. This was Speranski's cold, mirror-like look. Right.
This is just getting more and more overt.
Is that a thing too?
Mirror-like?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the origin story, right?
Narcissist.
Yeah.
Which did not allow one to penetrate to his soul. And his delicate...
Oh my God.
His delicate white hands, which Prince Andrew involuntarily watched as one does watch the hands of those who possess power. This mirror-like gaze and those delicate hands irritated Prince Andrew, for he knew not why. He was unpleasantly struck, too, by the excessive contempt for others that he observed in Speranski, and by the diversity of lines of argument he used to support his opinions. He made use of every kind of mental device, except analogy, and passed too boldly, it seemed to Prince Andrew, from one to another. Now he would take up the position of a practical man and condemn dreamers, now that of a satirist, okay, and laugh ironically at his opponents, now grow severely logical, or suddenly rise to the realm of metaphysics. His last resource was one he very frequently employed. He would transfer a question to metaphysical heights, pass on to definitions of space, time, and thought, and having deduced the refutation he needed, would again descend to the level of original discussion.
In general, the trait of Speranski's mentality which struck Prince Andrew most was his absolute and unshakable belief in the power and authority of reason. What? It was evident that the thought could never occur to him, which to Prince Andrew seemed so natural, namely that it is, after all, impossible to express all one thinks, and that he had never felt the doubt. Is that all I think and believe nonsense? And it was just this peculiarity of Speranski's mind that particularly attracted Prince Andrew.
During the first period of their acquaintance, Speranski felt a passionate admiration for him, similar to that he had experienced for similar to which he had once felt for Bonaparte.
Mm-hmm. The fact that Speranski was the son of a village priest and that stupid people might meanly despise him on account of his humble origin, as in fact many did, caused Prince Andrew to cherish his sentiment for him the more and unconsciously to strengthen it.
On that first evening, Speranski spent with him, having mentioned the commission for the revision of the Code of Laws. Speranski told him sarcastically that the commission had existed for 150 years, had cost millions, and had done nothing except that Rosenkampf had struck labels on the corresponding paragraphs of the different codes.
And that is all the state has for the millions it has spent, said he. We want to give the Senate new juridical, powers, but we have no laws. That is why it is a sin for men like you, Prince, not to serve in these times.
Prince Andrew said that for that work, an education in jurisprudence was needed, which he did not possess.
But nobody possesses it. So what would you have? It is a vicious circle from which we must break a way out.
A week later, Prince Andrew was a member of the Committee on Army Regulations and, what he had not at all expected, was chairman of a section of the Committee for the Revision of the Laws.
At Speranski's request, he took the first part of the civil code that was being drawn up, and with the aid of the Code Napoleon and the Institutes of Justinian, he worked at reformulating the section on personal rights. So also his whole plan is modeled after Napoleon's.
Yeah.
Good.
It's confusing.
What is confusing?
All of this.
Is it?
I understand that all of this happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's confusing.
What's confusing about it?
Well, that they're at war with Napoleon, but then stealing his ideas.
Well, they're not currently.
I'm not stealing. This is the simplified version of it that I know never fully exists. I just think when you declare war, when you're at war with someone, you're at war with someone. And apparently not. And I'll negotiate. Never mind how many people in the prison killed or what the state of Europe is like at that time.
Yeah, I think it's complex because people don't want war at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So pressure increases until people want war.
There's a little bird.
What?
There's a little bird.
Is that him?
No, it's a bird.
Goo!
Little tiny bird. Yeah, probably politics. Lawmaking, fascinating stuff.
You don't think so?
I don't. Do you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, politics, like,
I don't know, but do you find like the it's not patois, not, but like all the arguments and the talk about it just as interesting?
You think I only follow it for the drama?
Yeah, no.
No.
Obviously, I guess. Yeah.
No. Meaning, that's not the reason I pay attention. Yeah, I do like the idea.
No, I literally, I think of it as bureaucracy, but it probably isn't. Just like how complicated it is to create a law and all the work that goes behind all of that. Beyond the politics, we find that interesting too.
Yeah, because at some point it's a little inseparable from the laws. It's like a gradient, and it gets closer and closer to politics and nonsense. But there's always, the bedrock is always ideas.
Have you always been interested in that?
No. I used to my 100 years ago friend Dan, I used to quote that Simon Garfunkel song all the time. I get the news I need from the weather report. And he would be like infuriated by it.
No change.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, I think the more things seemed like they were going off the rails, like everybody just suddenly started to care at the beginning of, I don't know where you were at this time period, but after Clinton, people really gave a shit that Bush got elected. Like my contemporaries. I did. People got up in arms, and that was the first I remember paying a lot of attention. And then it sort of remained. It's way easier to pay attention when you're worried or afraid what's going on. So I was all about Obama. Like I went to DC and went to the inauguration, like on the mall, the freezing cold. So I was all about him, but I didn't feverishly keep up with every twist and turn because there were many twists. It was more like steady, semi-predictable work.
Yeah.
And then this, obviously, we are where we are. And I probably know more now than I ever have, and I think I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, there's something interesting about that like when politics works, you don't have, like people weren't paying attention. Or like not works, but when the waters were smoother, people weren't interested. And now when it's so dysfunctional, now people are like,
well, it's a call to action. It's like a reality check. Otherwise, you feel like I don't really have to participate or I don't have to do anything because everything's fine. So I think it's a pretty like.
But like hopefully, I don't know. I'm just like projecting into the future, like because you have to be aware before shit hits the fan. So like millions of people aren't participating because of that. Like this makes me think of health. Actually, like most like healthy action should be preventative.
Yeah.
So you should be taking just before you need to.
Yeah, but people don't. Some people do. And just like where the conversation began, a lot of people are incentivized not to participate. Like it blows my mind that the more people come out to vote, the more it swings to the Democrats. So it is in the Republican Party's interest that fewer people vote. That's crazy to me.
Such a weird platform.
That is crazy to me. That's also why they have to like cattle prod them so much with fear and anger and hatred. Because they like need them, and they need them to be all like charged the fuck up. Because they're not changing hearts and minds. They just have who they have it.
Okay. I want to stop it here.
Okay.
Before I lose faith in all of humanity.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't feel nearly as bad as I did at the beginning.
Really? Good. Okay.
Yeah. Because a lot of this is about like people actually mobilizing. Okay. Like now that it's kind of like the kind of like being quarantined, you hope and trust that it'll be for something, and that people will learn things that they might not have learned, and participate when maybe they wouldn't have, and like this is a clusterfuck, but it exposes the holes. It exposes all the like problem areas.
It really does.
And there's something to that.
I really hope that those don't go back to it. As much as that's vision too. I kind of hope that the world after this can't go back to it. I don't know what that's going to mean.
I mean, that being said, like a bunch of other countries, I think, I don't know where everyone is at, obviously, but the hardest hit places have like, they've passed the hardest. They like forwarded the thing for the most part. Like Italy's completely going down.
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, what's going on for us in this country is not necessarily the same thing as what's happening around the world. Like not everybody is in this situation, even though it's the same virus and the same numbers.
I cannot believe it.
Not the same numbers, but
richest country in the world, and they can't fight this. What?
they're also malnourished. Like who? And the life expectancy in this country has gone down for the first time. Yeah. It's a different kind of country.
And it wants to be different.
It's intentionally different.
Yeah.
But with a lot of this.
It kind of wants to be above human needs.
No.
Like this exposes the holes because this is so in a way this is so simple.
Well, that's also
It's like people getting sick, people's lives on the line.
that's also why this is the most fascinatingly antithetical challenge for Trump, because it is the least narcissistic. Like a virus is the least. It's a narcissist's worst nightmare because he cannot vilify it. He cannot. There's no game to play with it, and it does a simple, tangible thing to the body, the actual physical body.
Yeah.
That cannot be controlled, spun, like he can't. There's nothing. He's out of tools.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of thing is like the anti-narcissism. Good.
Antidote.
Names.
I haven't been reading a lot of news articles about Trump lately.
Mm-hmm.
What's he doing? Has he been? Yeah, he suddenly hasn't been in the news as much.
Oh,
so
he has
strange.
What do you mean? He's a live press conference every day.
Yeah, but like, if anything, also it kind of seems like the coronavirus has taken his spotlight. Because he used to be like, Trump said this, and now it's like, no, now we actually have something to focus on that actually means something.
Well, he means something.
He means something, but it's not all about him, is what I'm saying. I don't know. It's literally like I used to like scroll to my news section and it would be like Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not happening as much
Anywho.
See you tomorrow.
See you on the morrow.